Today, in The Ripple Effect, we are discussing the quiet transformation of the American dream. Not the one you see on postcards, the picket fence, the manicured lawn, but the one that kept people afloat. Home ownership wasn't just about pride, it was leverage. It was the foundation under generations of working families who didn't have stocks, didn't have trust funds, didn't have golden parachutes. They had a house, and that house wasn't just shelter. It was a vault. It was equity you could borrow against when tuition came due, when medical bills piled up, when you wanted to retire without working until you broke. But 2008 cracked that foundation. Not just a crack you patch with drywall, but a structural failure. Banks gambled with mortgages, lost the bet, and when the dust settled, families got foreclosed while banks got bailed out. Entire blocks were scooped up by private equity firms and corporate landlords, bought in bulk at discount prices. Blackstone, Invitation Homes, Zillow are names that sound like real estate tools, but operate more like hedge funds. Instead of families buying back in, neighborhoods became portfolios. Instead of roots, people got leases. Fast forward to now, you've got corporations treating housing like inventory, turning single-family homes into what they call assets under management. That's Wall Street language for your kitchen, your driveway, your kid's bedroom. And the math isn't subtle. They don't want you buying. They want you renting. Forever, they want you on a subscription plan. Sound familiar? It should. Because this is the same Netflix model mindset we've already been softened up for. We've been trained to pay monthly for music, movies, food delivery, even car features. BMW literally tested charging drivers a subscription fee for heated seats. Pay up or freeze. That was the moment people joked, "What's next, my shoes? My toaster?" But the punchline stopped being funny once it crossed over into housing. When the roof over your head gets treated like a Spotify account, you don't have a home, you have access until the payment clears. And here's where it matters the most: wealth transfer. Home ownership used to be the most reliable engine for building generational wealth in America. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't about flipping houses on HGTV. It was about a factory worker or a teacher who could buy a modest home, pay it off, and pass something down. That cycle built the middle class. It stabilized families who didn't have Wall Street portfolios. It gave them equity that couldn't be erased by a pink slip or a medical emergency. Now imagine that same cycle disrupted. If houses become subscriptions, generational wealth disappears because you're not stacking equity. You're not passing anything forward. You're just cutting checks to shareholders who own more doors than you'll ever walk through. This isn't just an economic story. It's political too, because deregulation made this possible. Policies that cracked the door open for private equity to swallow up entire neighborhoods weren't accidents. They were choices. And once those choices were made, the culture followed. That's the final piece, the cultural shift. Because when you train people to believe access is better than ownership, you rewire expectations. You make renting feel normal. You sell convenience while you strip away control. If the American dream was always framed as work hard, buy a house, build a life, then what happens when that house is no longer attainable? Or worse, when it's attainable, but only through a monthly subscription plan controlled by someone else? The dream doesn't just die. It gets leased back to you, month after month, until you can't tell if you're chasing it or paying for it. I want you to understand that the crash of 2008 didn't just erase homes. It rewired the system to make sure fewer people would ever own again. Think about who got hurt versus who got rescued. Families defaulted on mortgages, lost their houses, saw their credit destroyed. Meanwhile, the banks that bundled those toxic loans walked away with government bailouts, trillions in liquidity, too big to fail. And when the dust settled, the same financial giants that triggered the collapse rebranded themselves as saviors, stepping back into the market, only this time not as lenders, but as buyers. Enter private equity. Firms like Blackstone created subsidiaries, Invitation Homes being the most famous, whose entire model was bulk buying foreclosed properties, flipping them into rental portfolios, and sitting on the cash flow. Whole neighborhoods that once belonged to working-class families suddenly had the same landlord, Wall Street. Policy didn't just allow this, it encouraged it. Deregulation made mortgage-backed securities possible in the first place. Tax incentives and loopholes made it profitable for institutional investors to snatch up single-family homes. Local governments strapped for revenue didn't resist. They saw corporate buyers as stable taxpayers. HUD's budget was gutted in the Reagan years and never rebuilt, which meant there was no robust public housing option to offset the shift. Then came the algorithms. Zillow and other data giants took it further, not just buying and renting homes, but experimenting with flipping them at scale using predictive pricing models. For a moment, Zillow tried to turn entire housing markets into automated casinos, setting prices not based on community stability, but on data-driven arbitrage. The company eventually folded that experiment, but the effects remained. The normalization of housing as inventory, not as places where people live, grow, and own. And here's the darker layer, wealth concentration. Instead of tens of thousands of families each owning one home, you had a handful of corporations owning tens of thousands. That inversion matters, because ownership isn't just about paying rent versus paying a mortgage. It's about who benefits from appreciation. When the market rises, homeowners see their net worth climb. When the market rises now, renters just watch their monthly bill go up. This isn't isolated to one coast or one city. Atlanta, Phoenix, Charlotte, Las Vegas all saw massive buyouts post-2008. In some markets, 1 out of every 5 homes sold went directly to institutional buyers. That's not a free market. That's a controlled harvest. And once Wall Street realized the model worked, it spread. Manufactured housing parks, apartment complexes, even farmland. Anything that could produce rent or lease payments got swept into portfolios. Because the logic of capital is simple. Recurring payments beat one-time sales. Subscriptions scale better than ownership. Why sell one house for $200,000 when you can rent it forever and squeeze triple that over time? This is the structural shift nobody voted on, but everyone feels. Because once corporations get embedded in the housing market, they don't just compete, they set the terms. They control supply, they shape policy through lobbying, and they hold the leverage when families are forced to choose between paying rent or risking eviction. That's the broad outline. But to really see the weight of this shift, you have to look at the numbers, the raw market share, the geography, and the costs families are up against. Invitation Homes owns about 84,000 single-family houses across 16 major markets. Blackstone's portfolio stretches to roughly 274,000 rental units nationwide. In Las Vegas's Clark County, Progress Residential alone holds between 3,000 and 4,500 homes. In Washington, D.C., private equity firms control more than 92,000 apartment units. And in New York City, Blackstone's $5.3 billion purchase of Stuyvesant Town Peter Cooper Village delivered them over 6,200 rent-regulated apartments in one shot. By percentages, those numbers look small, less than 1% of America's housing stock. But percentages don't tell the story. Supply does. These firms aren't buying random properties across the board. They target the very homes first-time buyers need most. The $250,000 to $350,000 starter houses, the townhomes near schools, the entry-level properties that are supposed to be the ladder into stability. And when corporate capital enters that lane, the rules tilt. Families scraping together a $20,000 down payment face FHA inspections, loan contingencies, and 30-day closing periods. Wall Street shows up with cash offers, bulk deals, and algorithmic scouting tools that flag undervalued properties before regular families even step inside for a tour. To the seller, that's fast and guaranteed. To the family, that's a locked door. This is why tiny percentages create oversized ripples. If a firm owns even 1 in 20 houses in a neighborhood, it still sets the comps, nudges up rents, and squeezes the supply families are competing for. In Las Vegas, Progress's 4,000 homes aren't just numbers, they reshape prices for whole subdivisions. In DC, Those 92,000 units tilt the rental market. In New York, 6,200 apartments consolidated in one purchase altered affordability across an entire borough. These aren't minor plays, they're footholds. Now stack today's math on top. With the median U.S. home price at $425,000, a first-time buyer faces an $85,000 down payment and monthly mortgage payments of $2,800 to $3,200 at 7% interest rates. For most renters, that's out of reach without selling an existing home. Corporate landlords sidestep the interest altogether. They buy in cash, then rent those same houses back at $2,500 to $3,000 a month, collecting steady returns and keeping families in cycles of rent without equity. The optics are harsh. Even though Blackstone or Invitation Homes don't own the market statistically, they own the lane that matters most, the starter lane, the wealth-building lane, the entry point for generational stability. By stripping supply from that lane, they don't just outbid families, they rewrite the script. Homeownership becomes a luxury, renting becomes the default. And every blocked purchase isn't just one family's loss. It's another ratchet turn, another subscription cycle, another step in leasing the American dream back to the very people who built it. So what happens when homes become subscriptions? You can measure it in balance sheets, but also you feel it in neighborhoods. Start with affordability. Between 2010 and 2020, home prices outpaced wages in nearly every major metro area. In cities like Austin, Denver, and Nashville, housing costs doubled while incomes lagged behind. Renting, once framed as a stepping stone, became a permanent station. Young families who would have been first-time buyers in their late 20s now find themselves in their late 30s still writing rent checks. The wealth gap doesn't just widen, it becomes a canyon that people can't jump across, can't climb down, or can't get through. A family with a mortgage has a fixed monthly cost, often locked for 15 or 30 years. A renter has whatever the market says this year's worth. Corporate landlords, armed with data analytics, don't raise rents cautiously, they raise them algorithmically. Invitation Homes was documented hiking rents in bulk, sometimes 8 to 10% annually, with little regard for community impact. That's not just inconvenient, that's destabilizing. It pushes families to the edge, forces relocations, and disrupts schools, jobs, and community ties. And here's the social texture. Neighborhoods hollow out. When ownership drops, investment drops. Renters care about their homes, but landlords don't live there. They don't coach Little League. They don't show up at school board meetings. They don't plant gardens or fix sidewalks. They extract, and extraction leaves a mark. Communities stop feeling like communities and start feeling like waypoints. The impact extends into politics too. Homeowners vote at higher rates than renters. They have skin in the game, literally. When ownership declines, civic participation declines with it. That's not an accident. A population that's permanently renting is easier to manage, less likely to push back, less likely to demand structural change, and for renters, the squeeze doesn't stop at the lease. Rising rent pushes families to cut corners elsewhere. Healthcare gets delayed, retirement savings shrink, kids' college funds never start. The knock-on effects echoes for decades. A $200 rent hike today is the difference between financial breathing room and a lifetime of debt tomorrow. The final measure is psychological. The American dream was never just a marketing slogan, it was an anchor. People believed that if they worked hard, they could secure a piece of land, a roof of their own. When that anchor slips, you don't just destabilize families, you destabilize belief. People stop trusting the system, they stop buying into the promise, and that disbelief is contagious. What we're watching is more than a market cycle. It's a transformation of ownership itself. The promise that working families could claw their way into stability through a mortgage has been rewritten into a system where stability is conditional, rent-dependent, and endlessly extractive. If home ownership was once the cornerstone of the American dream, subscription housing turns it into a privilege controlled by investors. The long-term impact is cultural erosion. Families that might have planted roots are instead becoming permanent renters. Communities that once stabilized through ownership, where neighbors invested in schools, parks, and each other, now cycle through leases, their futures dictated by rent hikes. That instability pushes outward. It reshapes voting patterns, weakens civic engagement, and hollows out the very idea of belonging to a place. Economically, the transfer is stark. Equity that once built generational ladders now flows upward, consolidated in the hands of a few firms. Every rent check is a dividend. Every blocked purchase is a missed rung on the wealth ladder. It's not just about money lost in the moment, it's about wealth that never compounds, never gets passed down, never forms the base for the next generation to climb higher. Politically, the consequences are baked in. When corporations control supply, they also control leverage. They can lobby to shape tax codes, zoning laws, and housing policy in ways that protect their profits. They're not competing with families, they're competing with regulators. And in that contest, the family almost never wins. And here's the hardest truth. This isn't just a glitch to fix with better policy. It's a shift in how capitalism itself is being applied. The subscription model that once felt harmless in entertainment or consumer goods has crept into shelter. And once it locks in, it's hard to reverse, because convenience has already been sold as culture. Renting isn't just tolerated, it's normalized. Ownership isn't the dream. Access is. The ripple is clear. If homeownership becomes a subscription, the American dream mutates. It becomes a product you rent, an asset you can never keep, a promise that dangles just far enough out of reach to keep people paying. And as long as that cycle continues, equity doesn't spread. It concentrates. Stability doesn't grow. It contracts. And the dream, it doesn't belong to the people anymore. It belongs to the shareholders,